apologist, I would appreciate hearing you either recite or sing it rather than shout it.
There's still no legal peace. Korea remains divided and, in law at least, still at war with itself. Last Christmas, the North Koreans called a meeting to object to an American capitalist Christmas tree in the demilitarized zone.
Guard, hold! Right, hold! Guard, hold!
A few yards south of the border between North and South Korea, UN troops prepare to stand guard over yet another meeting of the Military Armistice Commission. The soldiers have gone through this ceremony once or twice every single month for the past 12 years, every time the commission is called to hear complaints of violations of the armistice agreement by one side against the other. On the other side of the hut, a few yards north of the border, the North Koreans follow suit. The commission meetings were originally planned to progress towards a peace treaty within 3 months. They haven't got there yet. They haven't even lost the outward appearances of the Cold War days when they started. Enter, from the south, the UN members of the Commission, American, British and South Korean, led by Senior Delegate Major General William P. Yarborough of the United States. Enter, from the north, the North Korean and Chinese Communist members, headed by Major General Chang of North Korea. The Commission has argued ferociously about every subject that lends itself to argument, from the size of the rival flags in the conference room to charges of troop concentrations and smuggling of spies across the border. The border here is marked by a microphone cable along the table. It helps to restrict the violence to words only.
Your hundreds of charges against the United Nations Command have been the well-known inundation tactics often used by your communist imperialist intelligence agencies. We have seen totalitarian governments of your slave world attempt to clog the wheels of our security agencies by sending literally hundreds of low-level agents on missions against the free people of the world. You are attempting to reach the same goal by shouting your hundreds of fabricated charges across this conference table. I'm afraid that I shall have to disappoint you, General Clark. Your charges are known for the fabrications they are, and we shall deal with them accordingly. In the meantime, perhaps you can explain to the United Nations and to the members of the press who are here why you continue to refuse to allow the Neutral Nation Supervisory Commission to do its job as provided for in the agreement signed by your Kim Il-sung and your Nam Il. You show yourself to be a master of deceit as you sit there and with eyes fierce in the grand Marxist manner sound off about carbines in the demilitarized zone, imaginary naval violations of your waters, hostile penetrations of your airspace by heavily armed, aggressive, imperialistic, warmongering light liaison airplanes and so forth, while your side was and remains guilty of the greatest violation of all.
A spoken translation ensures that no subtlety of emphasis is lost on the other side. After the American prepared statement, it's the communists' turn. In 12 years, the communists have charged the United Nations with 28,300 violations. The UN admitted to 83. The UN have countercharged with 4,200 violations, and the communists have admitted to 2. Only too often, no progress is reported after commission meetings. And if propaganda is the aim, that's a failure too. The world no longer listens. The only listeners are tourists, and for them the meetings have become a peep show offering a fruity glimpse of vintage Cold War abuse. Panmunjom is Korea's biggest tourist attraction, with 10,000 visitors a year from the south alone. They're under strict orders not to speak to North Koreans and to report any incidents immediately. While the meetings drag on, tourists survey the land that was fought over and flattened many times. Now so quiet and desolate, it's become a bird sanctuary. Roads in the demilitarized zone are closely guarded. Each side is allowed 1,000 troops and no more inside it. The number of tourists allowed in is controlled by the Armistice Commission, and there's every inducement to keep to the road. South of the zone, an army waits. 50,000 Americans, 600,000 South Koreans, waiting for the peace treaty that seems to be no nearer now than it was 12 years ago when the fighting stopped. Patrols are on constant lookout for communist agents trying to slip through. 3 miles to the north, the communists, equally suspicious, will be doing the same. A few Koreans live inside the demilitarized zone. There's one village on the North Korean side, another on the south, only a few miles from Panmunjom itself. The Americans call it Freedom Village, and they give generous aid to keep it prosperous and make it a showpiece. But for the villagers, freedom is more nominal than real. They can't travel north. If they want to go south, they have to get the permission of the Armistice Commission. If a woman here marries a man from another village, she has to move out. It's in the Armistice Agreement. And even their rice fields are surrounded by minefields in case they stray too far. The villagers, especially the children who look on these restrictions as part of normal life, contrive to keep cheerful, even though their future isn't promising. Economically, they look naturally to Japan and the north, but these are their most recent and deadliest enemies. But perhaps by the time these youngsters grow up, passions will have simmered down. The UN cemetery at Busan recalls the price that fighting men from 20 nations had to pay to show beyond doubt that the Western world would not tolerate calculated communist aggression in any part of the globe. The Americans lost 34,000 killed, compared with under 500 so far in South Vietnam. Turkey, 717, Britain, 670, the Australians, 265. Altogether, on both sides, more than 1 million fighting men killed. Today, 12 years later, there's still no legal peace. Korea remains divided and, in law at least, still at war with itself. The Armistice Commission has met 200 times, heard 12 million words, most of them acrimonious.
I had understood prior to this meeting that you really didn't understand your responsibilities under the Armistice Agreement, but now that you've read them publicly, there's no excuse for your not knowing them in the future. Further, I guess I must apologize for my lack of qualifications on the Military Armistice Commission, because perhaps they're now going to result in a cessation of the real progress which has been made at these meetings during the last 15 years.
As Churchill once said, jaw is better than war. Though at times the jaw here is far from adult. Last Christmas, the North Koreans called a meeting to object to an American capitalist Christmas tree in the demilitarized zone. They countered by releasing a flock of peace doves carefully trained to land on communist rooftops only. The Americans retorted that the communists had reduced the commission to a pantomime under armed guard.
Being a Yankee member of the United States...
And today, unless some new factor intervenes, there seems to be no prospect of the pantomime ever coming to an end.
I understand this is a popular song among the comrades proletariat, or is it a poem? As an amateur anthropologist, I would appreciate hearing you either recite or sing it, rather than shout it. Our side could probably furnish a violin or balalaika accompaniment if you would like to cooperate.